I was just a poor kid from a small town, yet the billionaire heiress of the Vanderbilt family treated me like I was the center of the universe. The tabloids call me her beautiful pet, a pretty toy she kept around for fun. I even saw her at a gala, arm in arm with a famous actor, and the world just assumed they were the perfect match. But no one knew I was the one whose name she called as she lay in a bathtub of bloody water, or the ex-boyfriend who, after disappearing for 4 years, would find her blackout drunk on my doorstep, choking out, "What do I even mean to you?" I was the one who walked away, crushed by my own insecurity, and spent years clawing my way up from nothing to become one of New York's top jewelry designers. And when we finally met again in an elevator, she cornered me, her eyes red, and said, "Just say the word, and I'll give you anything," because the diamond ring she'd chased me across the world for was never for anyone else. I ran into my wealthy ex-girlfriend in an elevator. It was the first time we'd seen each other since the breakup. The moment she saw the child in my arms, her usual cool composure shattered, and for the first time, she looked completely panicked. My mind instantly flashed back to that year. I saw her with my own eyes at a gala, on the arm of a famous actor. They were shoulder to shoulder, laughing intimately. In that moment, I was so utterly crushed by my own insecurity that all I could do was run. I never even found the courage to officially break up with her. Years later, I was invited back to New York for a career opportunity, only to find her blocking my way at the door. Her eyes were red as she stared at me. "Stop hiding from me," she said. "Tell me you've never gotten over me. Tell me you've regretted leaving me every single day. Tell me I'm the only person you've ever truly loved. Just say the words, and I'll give you anything." I saw Olivia again just as summer was coming to a close. It was my sister's 31st birthday, and her husband had booked a suite at a hotel to celebrate. I walked into the elevator holding my niece in my arms. I was lost in thought for a moment when the little girl pointed to a poster on the elevator wall, her face lit with curiosity. "Uncle, that lady is so pretty," she said. I followed her gaze and instantly froze. The woman in the poster was Olivia, who I hadn't seen in years. I'd heard she'd become incredibly successful, with a business empire that spanned the globe. My niece seemed fascinated by her. Pointing at the name on the poster, she asked, "Uncle, what does that say?" I was silent for a long moment, a faint tremor running through my chest as memories filtered through my mind like sand through a sieve. The elevator dinged, and the doors slid open. I heard myself whisper, "Vanderbilt. It's Olivia Vanderbilt." My niece let out a little giggle. But just then, a calm, pleasant voice spoke from right beside me. "Excuse me, were you two just talking about me?" I looked up toward the voice and met a pair of familiar almond eyes. It was Olivia. It felt like someone had hit a pause button on the world. For several seconds, she just stared at me, her face a mask of disbelief. Just as quickly, she regained her usual calm and collected composure. "I never expected this," she said. "After all these years, that we'd meet again like this." Olivia managed a faint, strained smile. "Lucas, long time no see." I just gave a slight nod. Even now, I couldn't find a single word to say to her face. Luckily, the elevator stopped at my floor. I clutched my niece and practically bolted out of the doors. Her urgent voice followed me down the hall. "Do you have a kid?" Before I could say a word, the little girl in my arms piped up. "Andy, this is my uncle. He's really handsome, but he's not married yet. He's single." I drew a sharp breath. Under Olivia's burning gaze, a dull ache spread through my chest. In the end, I still chose to run. Halfway through the party, I excused myself to get some fresh air. I took a deep drag from a cigarette, exhaling a perfect ring of white smoke. I stood leaning against the floor-to-ceiling window, silently watching the river of headlights flowing on the street below. The last few years hadn't been easy. At my lowest point, I had to stretch every single dollar. Thankfully, things had finally started to turn around. It was quiet out on the balcony, so the sound of approaching footsteps was sharp and distinct. I glanced up and saw Olivia standing a short distance away. Her hands were tucked in her pockets, her dark eyes resting on me, unreadable. "A few years go by, and you pick up smoking," she observed. "You never had bad habits like this before." She had always been impossible to read. I looked down, expertly grinding out the cigarette, but with my shoe. "Did you come all this way looking for me, Miss Vanderbilt?" I asked, "just to lecture me about my bad habits?" I started walking, my dress, shoes echoing sharply in the empty corridor. Each step felt like a heavy thud against my own heart. As I passed her, Olivia suddenly grabbed my arm. Her breathing was uneven. "Lucas, is there really nothing you want to say to me?" Her voice was urgent, almost pleading. I finally looked up and met her eyes, which were tinged with red. "What is there to say between exes?" I countered. "Reminisce about old times? Rekindle a dead flame? If you go soft now, Lucas, you're done for," I told myself. "You can fall for anyone else in the world, just not Olivia." I repeated it to myself again and again. I couldn't go back. But Olivia didn't argue. She just looked down and asked, "Where did you go all these years?" "I looked for you, but it was like you vanished without a trace." I gave a cold laugh. "Why were you looking for me?" As far as I was concerned, my disappearance back then was probably no more significant than her losing a pet. When she was happy, she'd toss me a scrap of affection. The moment someone more interesting came along, I'd be left out in the cold. I was nothing more than Olivia's pet. Seeing my cold demeanor, Olivia stared at me, her eyes boring into mine as if trying to decipher something. "You're cruel, Lucas," she said softly, "to just leave me like that. You left without a single word." Olivia and I started dating in college. Back then, I was just a student shuttling between lecture halls and the library, while she was already managing her family's vast corporation. Olivia's social circle was huge, mostly made up of kids who were born with silver spoons in their mouths. A poor student from a small town like me stuck out like a sore thumb. But she was incredibly thoughtful and took care of nearly everything in our relationship. While my friends were pulling all-nighters for exams, Olivia was leading me by the hand into a world I never knew existed. We took river cruises in London and visited art galleries in Paris. We chased the sunset on a cross-country road trip through the States. Our time in Rome was pure extravagance. A single night out could cost more than an average family makes in a year. There was no question Olivia was a nearly perfect girlfriend. But for me, her world was one I could never truly belong to. The class difference between us was just too vast. Our relationship was unbalanced from the very beginning. I couldn't just iMessage her whenever I wanted to talk, like a normal couple. She was always busy with work, and I was afraid to bother her. When we went out, her friends didn't even bother learning my name. It was an unspoken agreement that I was just the handsome arm candy at Olivia's side. I knew perfectly well that in our relationship, we could never be equals. She held all the cards. That became painfully clear one day when I saw her at a gala with that popular A-list actor, his hand resting casually on her shoulder. Standing together, they looked like a perfect match, a stark contrast to the awkwardness that always seemed to hang over us. In that instant, it wasn't jealousy I felt, but a wave of inferiority so powerful it felt like I was being crushed. That feeling of worthlessness consumed me, breaking me down completely. I hated that I couldn't fit in her world, and I hated myself for being so ordinary. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't be with her anymore. As long as I was with her, I would always feel small, like someone hiding beneath a safety net. So, on one perfectly ordinary night, I quietly packed my things and moved out of the apartment she owned but let me live in. No breakup. No goodbye. I snapped my SIM card and cut off all contact. I promised myself that the next time we met, I would be successful enough to stand beside her as an equal. I would make a name for myself so I could be seen and respected on my own terms. I moved to another city and threw myself into my work. I saved every penny I could, truly learning what it was like to struggle. Years later, I had become a high-end jewelry designer and received a lucrative offer to return to New York. I had finally made it. I know it was selfish to leave the way I did, but that wasn't the life I wanted for myself. Even if we had tried to force it to work, we wouldn't have been happy in the long run. I pulled myself from the memories and focused on the Olivia in front of me. She was more mature now, with a sharper edge than I remembered. I let out a long breath. In just a few years, my entire perspective on the world had shifted. I was more cautious now, in the habit of weighing every pro and con before I acted. Right now, all that stood between Olivia and me was years of distance and indifference. What she was clinging to was just the memory of the boy I was in college. I was just her first love, the one you never forget. I couldn't give her that anymore. I looked at Olivia and sighed. I admit, the way I left was sudden, I said. Olivia, it's over between us. Whatever you're holding on to, it doesn't mean anything to me now. I turned to leave, but she grabbed me. She pulled me into the emergency stairwell, her body practically pressed against mine. In a flash, Olivia had me pinned against the corner wall. A surge of anger went through me. Let go, I snapped. But she held me fast, her eyes red and her grip unyielding. I'm not letting go, she said. I already let you walk away once. I'm not making that mistake again. Before I could even process her words, she was kissing me. Her kiss was aggressive, demanding. The more I struggled, the tighter she held on. She gasped for breath against me, burying her face in my chest, and I could feel hot, salty tears seeping into my shirt. She was crying. It was the first time I had ever seen Olivia cry. In the quiet, narrow stairwell, her sobbing voice trembled in my ear. Don't hide from me anymore, Lucas. Tell me you've never forgotten me. Tell me you've regretted leaving me every single day for all these years. Tell me I'm the only person you've ever truly loved. Just say it, and I'll give you anything. The air was so thick with emotion I could barely breathe, let alone speak. It was only then that I realized Olivia could lose control like this. But this breakdown wasn't necessarily all about me. Maybe she was having problems in her love life. Or maybe it was just years of pin-up emotion finally bursting out. But she was with someone else now. Why was she holding on to me like this? I looked down and gently pushed her away. Even if I said all of that, I asked quietly, would you believe me? Our eyes met, and I watched the light in hers slowly fade. When I came out of the stairwell, my sister, Sarah, was looking for me. She saw the look on my face and asked with concern, what happened? I shook my head, forcing a weak smile. Just getting some air. Let's go back. Sarah gave me a look that said she could see right through me. Lily told me, she said. She said her uncle met a very pretty lady in the elevator today. Do you know her, Lucas? She was my girlfriend in college. I could see the surprise in Sarah's eyes. All these years, I've been telling you to give the other girls who like you a chance, she said. You never would. Was it because of her? I shook my head again, my thoughts a complete mess. It's not like that, Sarah. Seeing I was still emotional, she didn't push it. She just smiled and squeezed my hand. I have a husband and a daughter now, so of course I want someone to take care of you. But more than anything, I just want you to be happy. As long as you're happy, it doesn't matter if you never get married. Her expression was so gentle and reassuring. To be honest, there was never a shortage of women interested in me over the years. They were all wonderful, beautiful, and smart, generous, kind, and thoughtful. But I could never bring myself to start a new relationship. The problem was never them. It was me. Little by little, I had lost the ability to truly love someone. On Monday morning, my assistant, Sam, was in my office giving me the rundown of the day's schedule, as usual. I kept my head down, sketching a new design while he spoke. After he finished with the work-related items, Sam hesitated. Lucas, he started, there was a woman here looking for you a little while ago. She was stunning. I set down my pen and looked up at him. Did she leave a name? No. She just said she was here to see you. I glanced at my watch and nodded. Show her to the conference room. I'll be right there. It wasn't until I pushed open the door to the conference room that I understood how she'd found me. Olivia was there, wearing a simple black dress that made her look more approachable, less of the sharp, distant woman I remembered. The moment I walked in, her dark eyes locked onto me and didn't leave as I crossed the room and sat down opposite her. You work fast, Miss Vanderbilt, I said, finding my studio so quickly. I managed a tight, humorless smile, my eyes fixed on her. Olivia could surely hear the sarcasm in my voice, but she chose to ignore it. Lucas, I'm here to discuss a business proposal, she said. I just looked at her, saying nothing. I want to hire you to design a diamond ring. Her eyes were dark and bright, her expression calm, but carrying an odd, magnetic pull. I took a sip of my coffee. As far as I was concerned, business was business, and I wasn't about to turn down a commission, especially from someone with pockets as deep as Olivia's. Out of professional habit, I asked, "And for what occasion is this ring intended?" A slow smile spread across her lips. "A wedding." As she said the word, her expression softened with a tenderness I had never seen from her before. My hand jolted, spilling a little coffee. She was getting married? To that actor? It made sense. An event that big would require a custom ring, something worthy of his celebrity status. Olivia gave me a pointed look. "Is that going to be a problem?" "No," I said, swallowing the bitter taste in my throat. "If you have any specific requirements, Miss Vanderbilt, you could discuss them with my assistant. I'll send you the final designs for approval." She raised an eyebrow, not letting me off the hook. "I prefer to work with you directly," she insisted. "My fiancé is very particular. If he isn't satisfied with the final product, it's me who will have to deal with it." Seeing my hesitation, Olivia pressed further. "Lucas, we have a history. You can't help me with this one small thing." As she spoke, she cast a meaningful glance through the glass wall at my team working in the studio. The threat was clear. Fine, she won. I didn't want anyone in the studio to know about our past. I pulled out my phone to get her number. A satisfied smile finally touched Olivia's lips. But after getting my number, she was surprisingly quiet. She never texted or called to check on the design's progress. I was more than happy with the silence. It saved me from the turmoil I felt every time I dealt with her. But fate has a twisted sense of humor. I never thought I would see that actor again. I was heading home from work one evening when he walked out of the apartment directly across from mine. He seemed to be in a rush, and we nearly ran into each other by the elevators. "Lucas," he said, his voice laced with surprise. I turned completely baffled. He knew my name. He didn't seem hostile, just gestured tentatively toward my apartment. His long finger pointed at my door number. "You live here?" I nodded. "Yeah, I bought it a little while ago." A flicker of understanding crossed his face, followed by an unreadable smile. "Right, I almost forgot to introduce myself. I'm Olivia's brother. My name is Liam Vanderbilt." Her brother, Liam, shook my hand warmly. So, the man I had seen with Olivia at the gala all those years ago was her brother. I was wondering why she was so insistent on buying an apartment in this building, Liam said. "Now I see it was because of you." Liam chuckled, a knowing glint in his eye. "If you don't mind, could I come in for a minute?" "Oh, of course," I said, still so stunned that it took me a moment to register his question and open the door. "Can I get you something to drink?" "Just water is fine, thanks." I smiled at Liam. He had a clean, sharp look, and he'd been quietly studying me since he walked in, his gaze curious but not unkind. "Aren't you curious how I know your name?" he asked. I sat down on the sofa across from him and looked at the floor, not saying a word. I didn't need to ask. It was obviously because of Olivia. Liam took a sip of water and looked at me, his expression serious. "I didn't even know you existed until after you two broke up," he began. "Back then, my sister was turning the world upside down looking for you. She searched everywhere, but there was no trace of you. You probably wouldn't believe it, but Olivia has always been very reserved and self-controlled. That was the first time I'd ever seen her fall apart over a guy. I told her you must have had your reasons, and that if you were meant to be, you'd find each other again. But she kept searching for the next 6 months. I watched her go from hopeful to disappointed to completely and utterly broken. Then one day, I went to her apartment to check on her. I'll never forget what I saw. She was in the bathtub. There was a deep gash across her wrist. My mind went completely blank. Olivia. She had tried to kill herself. Because of me. As he said this, Liam finally broke down and started to cry. A cold dread crept up from my feet, and I felt the blood turn to ice in my veins. Liam covered his face, his voice breaking. I panicked. I called 911 immediately. Waiting outside or for those few hours, I imagined every worst-case scenario. Thankfully, they were able to save her. When she woke up, she was a wreck. The first thing she said to me was, "Why did you save me?" he choked out. "Lucas, my sister used to be so full of life. You absolutely destroyed her." Tears streamed down my face, hot against my skin. My heart ached as if it were caught in a vice. I had no idea. I whispered, "Mr. Vanderbilt, I am so sorry." Liam slowly caught his breath, wiping the tears from his face. He shook his head and managed a small smile. It's not your fault. My sister is just stubborn. Once she sets her heart on someone, she can't let go. She always seems so cold and distant with everyone. But she was truly, completely in love with you. Now that you're back, whether you get back together or not, I just hope the two of you can finally clear the air. Liam stood up and patted my shoulder. I looked up at him, and I could see the encouragement in his eyes, as if he were silently telling me there was still a chance. A wave of guilt washed over me, so strong it nearly drowned me. I needed time to process everything about Olivia and me. I shook Liam's hand and finally nodded. On Friday night, the club was packed, with people losing themselves to the music on the dance floor. In a nearby booth, our group was celebrating our friend Chris's birthday. Seeing that my mind was elsewhere, he came and sat down next to me. I never pegged Olivia as the type to be so devoted, he said. Honestly, even I was shocked when I heard the story. For once, the normally goofy Chris was serious. I always just thought Olivia was some spoiled heiress who wasn't that into you. But now, it seems like I was completely wrong. I looked up at Chris. He gave a wry smile. Olivia came to see me a few years ago. She was in a really bad place, looked completely hollowed out. The light was just gone from her eyes. She kept asking if I knew where you were. Back then, I was still angry on your behalf about how things ended. So of course I didn't tell her anything. Looking back, if I just said something, maybe she never would have gotten to that point. Chris sighed, his face filled with regret, and downed the rest of his drink. I looked down, a dull pain spreading in my chest. I'm gonna head out, I said, my lips a thin line. You guys have fun. Before Chris could respond, Jessica stood up. I haven't been drinking tonight. I can give you a ride. I shot a look at Chris, who just shrugged with an innocent don't look at me expression. Jessica was a high school classmate of mine and Chris's. Ever since I moved back to New York, she'd been not so subtly pursuing me. Chris told me she had a crush on me back in high school, but I was too clueless to ever notice. Don't worry about it. I'll just grab a cab, I said with a polite smile. But Jessica insisted. You've been drinking. It's not safe to go alone. Besides, I passed right by her place on my way home. It's really no trouble. Seeing how insistent she was, I felt I couldn't refuse. My apartment was only a 10-minute drive from the bar. The night air was cool, and the streetlights cast our long shadows side by side on the sidewalk. Thanks for the ride, especially so late, I said genuinely, which seemed to make her a little shy. She smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Of course. She took a deep breath, looking a little nervous. Are you free this weekend? I was thinking, maybe we could get dinner. Sorry, I said, looking at her apologetically. I'll probably have to work through the weekend. As if not wanting to pressure me, she quickly backpedaled. Oh, that's okay. You just moved back, you must be swamped. Just let me know whenever you're free. I looked her directly in the eye. I'm really sorry, I said. I'm just not looking to date anyone right now. You should find someone else. Don't waste your time on me. My rejection was blunt, and I saw the smile freeze on her face. In a way, Olivia and I were both the same kind of stubborn. I turned to head inside, but she called out after me, her eyes intense. Lucas, I'll wait, she said. I'll wait until you're finally ready to see me. And before I could reject her again, she jumped back in her car, started the engine, and sped off into the night. I watched her taillights disappear and let out a soft sigh. Love was such a complicated thing. No matter how many times I turned her down, Jessica still held onto the hope that her persistence would eventually win me over. But gratitude isn't love, and I could never feel the same way about her. I pulled the collar of my jacket up against the chill and walked toward the elevators. The doors dinged open, and I was hit by the overwhelming stench of alcohol. Olivia was slumped on the floor in front of my apartment door. Even in such a messy state, she still possessed an innate elegance that was captivating. Empty bottles were scattered around her feet. How much had she had to drink? I frowned, and we stared at each other in silence. I had never seen Olivia look so disheveled. Her lips were pressed into a thin, tight line. After a long moment, she spoke, her voice low. You. The word caught in her throat, and she couldn't seem to get anything else out. I clenched my fists unconsciously, my knuckles turning white. Me what? I prompted. She hesitated, as if searching for the right words. That woman who just dropped you off, she finally managed. Are you with her? Olivia looked exhausted. Her beautiful eyes were so bloodshot, they looked like they might actually bleed. So that was why she was so drunk. It's not what you think, I said. I reached down to help her up, but she slapped my hand away, her eyes swimming with pain. After a moment of silence, a self-mocking smile touched her lips. Lucas, what do I even mean to you? With that, she pushed herself up against the wall and slowly got to her feet. She kicked an empty can out of her way and staggered toward the elevators. And just like that, Olivia walked away without a backward glance, not giving me a single chance to explain. I hardly slept at all that night. Every time I closed my eyes, memories of my time with her played out like a slideshow in my mind. For my 21st birthday, Olivia threw me a surprise party. It was the best birthday I'd ever had. She gave me a watch and held my hand, promising she would only ever love me. We kissed, surrounded by the envious looks of our friends, feeling young and proud and so sure of our future. I've always been a light sleeper, so Olivia would always wait until I was asleep before she went to bed. On nights when I woke from a nightmare, she would be there to comfort me. It's okay, Lucas, she'd whisper. It was just a bad dream. But during all the long, dark nights after I left, God, how I missed the way she smelled. The only response I ever got was the cold silence of my empty room. I admit it, I was a coward. I was too scared to let her know how much I loved her, afraid she would think even less of me. And I couldn't bear the thought of her with another man. So, for all these years, I stayed away. One of my greatest fears was that one day I would hear that Olivia had gotten married. I bolted awake from a dream. The clock on the wall read 2 a.m. I got up to get a glass of water, and just then my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered, and the line was filled with the noise of a crowded bar. A woman's voice on the other end sounded relieved. Lucas, thank God you finally picked up. Olivia asked a few of us girls to go out for drinks, and as soon as we got to the bar, she started pounding them back one after another. We tried to get her to slow down, but she wouldn't listen. Now she's completely passed out. I have a feeling it has something to do with you. Can you please come and get her? My temples throbbed as I quickly asked for the address. When I got to the bar, Megan, one of Olivia's oldest friends, was waiting for me outside. Lucas, you're finally here, she said. Olivia's still inside, passed out. You're the one who called? Yeah, that was me. When I called you, she was muttering your name in her sleep. I stopped in my tracks. Megan glanced back at me, a questioning look on her face. What is it? I forced a weak smile. It's nothing. I pushed open the door to the private room and found Olivia sleeping soundly. Even completely drunk, she looked peaceful. The alcohol had flushed her fair skin a pale pink, and she seemed even more fragile than when she was sober. I carried her to my car and settled her in the back seat. Just as I was about to close the door, Megan stopped me. Lucas, I know it might be a bit forward of me to call you that, given your relationship now. But Olivia always wanted us to. We've never called any of her other boyfriends by their first name. At this hour, the streets were nearly empty, the night strangely silent. I leaned against the car door, my hands in my pockets. Back then, none of you even bothered to learn my name. I let out a bitter laugh. I'd never gotten over the feeling of being treated like Olivia's arm candy. Megan realized my mistake. You've got it all wrong, she said. That was never Olivia's intention. She said you were young and sensitive, and she was worried that if we were too friendly, it would just make you more uncomfortable. She thought it would overwhelm you. Privately, we all knew you were the one for her. There was never anyone else. These past few years have been really hard on her. It's not my place to say more. You should ask her yourself when she wakes up. I let out a long sigh. Looking back, whenever I was around her friends, I always felt like they were protecting me. They never once made fun of where I came from. It turns out it was all because of Olivia quietly smoothing the way for me behind the scenes. I couldn't help but laugh at how stupid I'd been. That silly girl, what else had she been hiding from me? The 10-minute drive to my place felt like it took all night. By the time we arrived, Olivia was mostly sober. We stood side by side in the elevator, the silence between us surprisingly comfortable. Why did you buy the apartment across the hall from me? I asked, breaking the silence. Olivia gave a little hum and confessed quietly. I wanted to see you more. I didn't say anything else. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped out first. She obviously couldn't stay in my place, so she obediently punched the code into her own keypad. I was about to tell her to get some rest when she suddenly found a new burst of energy and pulled me inside her apartment. In the darkness, Olivia expertly shut the door, pushed me up against it, and standing on her toes, she kissed me. The kiss was fierce and tasted of wine, her movements fluid and sure. Her lips were hot and unrestrained, and I was so dazed that I instinctively wrapped my arms around her waist. She reached behind her, fumbled for the light switch, and flicked it on. The lights flooded the room. Olivia leaned against my chest, her eyes burning with an intense emotion. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have let you explain. I waited for you for hours tonight. When I saw that woman drop you off, I just lost it. I couldn't control myself." She looked like a little kid who'd done something wrong, her eyes filled with a desperate hope for forgiveness. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen such a vulnerable, youthful expression on her face. I felt my face flush. Patiently, I explained, "It really isn't what you think. She's the one who likes me." But I already turned her down. Olivia let out a soft laugh. I know. Her gaze intensified, her dark eyes shining like they held the night sky. I suddenly swept her up into my arms, my voice a low, rough whisper in her ear. "Olivia, I can't do this anymore." The next morning, I woke up in her bed. I slipped on the slippers beside the bed and walked out of the bedroom to find Olivia in the kitchen, making oatmeal. When she saw me, she placed a steaming bowl on the counter. "Here, have some." I sat down at the breakfast bar. The warm, nutty aroma of the oatmeal did nothing to stir my appetite. I idly stirred it with my spoon, not wanting to eat. I looked over at Olivia, who was still bustling around the kitchen. "What happened to your wrist?" I asked, my voice serious. As soon as the words were out, her whole body went rigid. She turned to face me slowly, but she wouldn't look at me. I wanted to take her hand, but she flinched away. "Don't look," she pleaded. "It's ugly." I ignored her and gently took her wrist. The moment my fingers brushed against the scar, my eyes welled with tears. The scar was long and deep. Just imagining what must have happened made it hard to breathe. If Liam hadn't gotten there in time, I couldn't even bear to think about it. If Olivia had died because of me, I would have had to live with that guilt for the rest of my life. She gently wiped a tear from my cheek with her thumb. "What are you crying for?" she said softly. "I'm okay, see?" I gripped her hand tighter. "How could you do something so stupid?" She sighed and wrapped her arms around my waist. "For the first 6 months after you disappeared, I hated you. I hated you so much it hurt. I hated that you crashed into my life only to walk away without a word. After a while, I started to wonder if it was my fault, if I wasn't good enough, and that's why you left. But you have to believe me. From the day we got together, I knew you were the one. I even promised myself that one day, I was going to marry you." The softer her voice became, the harder I cried. I was only just beginning to understand how much she had been through on her own all these years. She fumbled to wipe away my tears, then finally just leaned in and kissed them from my cheeks. "Lucas, you're going to be the death of me," she murmured. "All these years, I've told myself I hated you, but I can't stand to see you upset. When you cry, my heart breaks. Looks like I'm stuck with you, huh?" I admit, my pride got the better of me back then, but there were still things we needed to talk about. There had been too many misunderstandings. I led Olivia to the sofa, and we sat down. "When we were together back then, I felt so insecure." I began. "I was just a broke college kid, and you were already this incredibly successful woman. I always felt like everyone was thinking the same thing, that I wasn't good enough for you. I was afraid to share my joys with you, and even more afraid to share my sorrows. I knew how busy you were, and I didn't want to be another burden. The entire time we were together, I never felt secure. You always felt so distant, and it made me think I was just a game to you, a handsome trophy you could show off." When I finished, Olivia stared at me in disbelief. "I never, ever thought of you that way," she said, her voice firm. A look of realization slowly dawned on her face, as if she was finally understanding just how differently we had seen things. "Lucas," she said, "how could you have gotten it so wrong?" She leaned into my embrace. Do you know why I fell in love with you? I shook my head. She began to patiently tell the story from the very beginning. The first time I ever saw you was at Greenwood Cemetery. You were wearing a simple white shirt and holding a bouquet of chrysanthemums. I was there visiting my father's grave. It was raining hard, and I was completely soaked. As I walked past you, you held out your umbrella. I asked you what you would do without it. You said you lived nearby, and then I just watched as you ran off into the rain. By the time I realized I should go after you, you were gone. Olivia smiled softly. I'd never met a guy like you before. So kind that you'd rather get soaked yourself than watch a stranger stand in the rain without an umbrella. So I had someone find you, and that's when we started dating. I honestly thought that as soon as you graduated, we would get married. But you were always so independent. You never wanted to rely on me or my family status. And you weren't clingy like other guys. You weren't trying to be with me 24/7. But the truth is, I'm a very possessive person. I would get jealous when I saw you talking to other girls. I'd see you laughing with your classmates and hate that I wasn't a student too, that I couldn't share that part of your life. So I tried my best to act like I didn't care. I told myself I had to respect your independence. And you misunderstood that as me not loving you, didn't you? I had never heard any of this before. I had no idea she felt that way. Now that everything was out in the open, I told her my side. And that's exactly why I was so afraid to show you how much I loved you. I was scared you'd look down on me. A boy toy isn't supposed to actually fall in love with his wealthy girlfriend. I was terrified of being vulnerable, terrified of being the one who got hurt in the end. Olivia placed a soft kiss on the corner of my mouth, her eyes full of pain. You idiot, she whispered. I was the one who was insecure. I was always so afraid you thought I was nothing without my money. I even thought that if you only liked me for my money, at least that was something I actually had to offer. But you never cared about any of it. My heart skipped a beat, and I finally brought up the thing that had weighed on me for so many years. The truth is, it wasn't just my insecurity. Back then, I thought you and Liam were together. Olivia stared at me, stunned. Lucas, why didn't you ever just ask me? I was just going with my little brother to a business event. And just like that, one by one, we unraveled all the misunderstandings of the past. It was only then that I truly understood just how deep our miscommunications had run. Olivia lay in my arms and poured out everything she had been holding inside for years. She spoke until her voice was hoarse, and finally, exhausted, she fell asleep against me. I pressed a soft kiss to her lips, then carried her to the bedroom and gently covered her with a blanket. Since we'd gotten back together, Olivia wanted to spend every second of the day with me. She insisted I go everywhere with her, as if she were afraid that if she blinked, I would vanish from her life all over again. I knew she was still terrified that I would just disappear again. And while I was overjoyed to have her back, underneath the excitement, a deep-seated anxiety began to surface. No matter how many times I told her I wasn't going anywhere, she still clung to me at night, holding me so tightly it felt like she was trying to merge our bodies into one. Liam, of course, was thrilled for us. When he saw us together, he started smiling, and then his eyes filled with tears. A month later, I proposed to Olivia. I did it in the new house we had bought together, with all of her childhood friends and Chris there to witness it. The room was filled with red roses. I planned every last detail. Olivia was radiant that day, practically glowing. I got down on one knee, and my hand was the very diamond ring she had commissioned me to design. I had to admit, the woman was a brilliant strategist. She'd been setting up this entire game since the day I got back to New York. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the wild hammering in my chest. Olivia, I began, this is our 6th year together. But for 4 of those years, you weren't with me. It feels like the fog has finally lifted, the light is pouring in, and I can see you standing right here in front of me, perfectly clear. This morning started out as just another ordinary day. You were sleeping peacefully in my arms, and I couldn't look away. I didn't want to fall back asleep because I was terrified that if I closed my eyes, I'd open them again and you'd be gone. And in that moment, looking at you, I made a decision. I'm going to propose to you right now, I said. I know it's sudden and it might be a shock, but this time it's real. For so long, you were the one carrying all the weight for both of us. Now, It's my turn to be brave. I want to bring you home. Olivia Vanderbilt, will you come home with me? From where I knelt, I could see her hand, clutching the bouquet, trembling slightly. Our friends started cheering all around us. Say yes. Say yes. Say yes. In that moment, I felt like the luckiest man alive. After all those years, Olivia had waited for me. I knew that for countless sleepless nights to come, I would remember the feeling of my heart pounding in my chest at this very second. She took the ring from my hand and slowly slid it on her finger. From now on, she said, her voice thick with emotion, I'm Mrs. Miller. The cheering around us erupted, but in Olivia's eyes, I was the only person in the room. Under the silvery moonlight, I pulled her into a tight embrace, too overcome with emotion to speak. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered in my ear, what did I ever do to deserve this? Then she added, you're the best gift this world has ever given me. What Olivia didn't know was that she was the real gift. I'd also never told her that the rainy day at Greenwood Cemetery all those years ago was the day I had just lost someone very close to me. I had been sitting on the cemetery steps for hours, not moving until the sky began to grow dark. That's when Olivia had walked by, wearing a perfume that smelled wonderful. The weather had started to turn, and a light rain began to fall. Olivia walked over, had her bodyguard hand her a black coat, and draped it over my shoulders herself. You're not dressed warmly enough, she had said. You'll catch a cold. It's getting late. You should go home. She was shivering herself, but the look in her eyes was so incredibly warm. Olivia would probably never know how much that small act of kindness meant to me in that moment. I nodded, and it was only then that I noticed a large patch of her own clothes was already soaked from the rain. I pulled an umbrella from my backpack and handed it to her. I never would have dreamed that she would remember such a small, insignificant gesture for so many years. I was like a flower that had forced its way through concrete, blooming in a place of despair. Most people who saw me just wanted to pluck me for themselves. But Olivia, who was only passing by, was willing to open her umbrella and shelter me from storm. It was like she was saying, you just worry about blooming. I'll be right here. When we close the book on the story of Lucas and Olivia, we see a mirror of our own inner worlds. The real villain of their story isn't external hardship, but the silent scripts they each wrote in their minds, never sharing them with one another. Carrying our own fears and hopes, we quietly assign roles to others and pre-write their lines, only to feel hurt or disappointed when they deviate from our plot. We forget that they're living out their own equally sincere script, one we have never read. True growth and healing, then, come not from writing a perfect script, but from having the courage to swap stories and co-author them together. It begins with the simple, yet profound, act of asking with sincere curiosity instead of judgment. What are you thinking then? What are you afraid of? So, in your own life, the next time you feel confused or about to pass judgment on a relationship, perhaps you can pause and gently ask yourself, am I trapped in the script I've written, or am I willing to step out and ask about the story that belongs to them?